I've had the pleasure of knowing both Rob and Tim for, I think, over a decade in both cases. Rob is currently, we met when Rob was at Bloomberg. Rob is currently the Director of North American Partnerships at Meta, the recently renamed Facebook. And Tim is the Chief Digital Officer and also oversees NASCAR entertainment for NASCAR. We did have a bit of a programming change, and so kudos to Tim for changing some things around and also being here on time per Steve Phelps last night. We'll start with Rob. I'm going to ask the most basic 101 question for those who may not have high familiarity with the current, the new strategy at Meta. So
yeah.
First of all, what is the metaverse in your words, and why corporately are you so bullish about it?
Yeah, and by the way, over the 10 years, I think we could all agree Matt's the only one that still looks the same, which is quite remarkable.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think for us, the main reason we're so excited about the metaverse, and I'll explain how we look at it very shortly, it's the future of social in our minds. I mean, it's really that simple. When I think about the metaverse, and our job is ultimately to explain it and help the sports industry get in and invest in it. It's the metaverse is really like a couple of characteristics. Number one is presence. So when you think about how you're able, and actually I should use the word space, the fact that you could go into, and right now it's putting on a pretty clunky headset, that'll change over the years, but when you put that on, it allows you to feel as though you're literally 3 feet away from someone who could be thousands of miles away. Great example right now, you could play a golf round in Valhalla, and literally you're on the putting green with your best friend. Or your family member. For me, it's my brother and I. I'm able to text him at 10 o'clock at night and say, hey, you around, want to play a quick round? And we're able to literally play around as though we're standing 3 feet from each other. Number two is depth, and that's where the technology comes in. My kid's favorite use case of MetaQuest is going on a roller coaster game. And when they go down the roller coaster, they get that feeling in their belly button. It feels as though they literally are going downhill. The technology is remarkable, and we're up to that point where you could truly experience that. Number three, I'd say, is continuity of space and goods. The idea that you could put on a shirt, or for you to dress up your avatar, and no matter where you go, you're going to be able to still have that level of continuity. It's funny, we just are launching avatars in a marketplace that would allow our partners to monetize and sell. And probably the most controversial part is that we want to allow all of our partner SDKs, in other words, other app developers, to be able to have that presence still reflected there. So for example, if you buy a NASCAR hat, you would be able to have it show up whether you're playing a round of golf in the game Golf Plus, or whether you go to a Horizon World, or even go into a third-party app. The idea is the continuity is going to exist. And then finally, presence. I mentioned that top. It's really the idea that this is social. It allows you to actually be around people and be social. It's funny, when you think about video games, especially for the over 40 crowd, myself included, you don't really think of it from a social manner. You think of it as someone kind of in their bedroom or in the basement playing a game by themselves for a number of hours. That's not the case anymore. When people play video games, it's very social. They're actually interacting and engaging with people all over the world. What we believe the new form of technology is going to allow is to make it feel as though you're literally in the same room as people. And so for us as a company, we think that this technology is going to have several different use cases. It started with gaming, which is kind of what Oculus has been doing for almost 10 years. But we now are investing to have it become the next workplace room. The idea that you could, it's an upgrade to Zoom, and that you could have people in a virtual room surrounding a table, that you could all see someone go up to the front of the room with a whiteboard and write down notes, that it would immediately integrate into anything from Google Docs to the different Microsoft tools. And it's a much more realistic version of what we're used to, while still being virtual and allowing people to live any place at any time.
So Rob, that's a pretty big shift for when you first joined Facebook 8 years ago, is that right?
Almost 9, yeah.
9 years ago. So I think for most of the property owners, the leagues and the teams in the room, they knew Facebook as licensing some sort of rights from leagues or teams, whether it was live rights for some period of time or highlight rights. Where are you currently on that?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing to always remind the industry is that at its heart, Facebook's a technology company. And so because of that, our priorities change on a dime. So I've been there almost 9 years now. When I joined in 2014, we were meeting with the Bleacher Report team and different partners, including ESPN, and trying to convince them, instead of posting status updates and pictures, post links. It'll drive your business objectives by taking people to your owned and operated, and at that time, roughly 1 of every 4 clicks on the internet came from Facebook. So it was a great value proposition for the industry. And for us, it was a win because people would come to our platform and enjoy that experience of easily accessing the content they're interested in. Fast forward 2 years, we rolled out a video player. And I think when it first rolled out, it came across as incredibly competitive to the video industry. I think a lot of people were concerned about cannibalization. I know Matt and I had to convince from opposite ends in order to make some of our partnerships work. And the key for us was coming up with strategy that would make it very clear that there is a value proposition, once again, from investing in a content strategy on Facebook. And at the time, Matt, you probably remember, it was all about the second screen. For us in our data, we saw that people weren't coming to Facebook to watch a 4-minute video instead of television. What we actually found, especially with a partnership with Nielsen, is that they were coming to Facebook between the commercial breaks. And our conversations would go up while the broadcast ratings would historically go down. So we got creative with our broadcast partners and came up with strategies to actually program the second screen in order to retain the relationship between the broadcast and its viewers. 2 years pass, and that's when we started to invest into premium live sports. Of course, when we did that, we weren't looking to compete with our broadcast partners again. That's where I think Facebook as a technology platform is very different. We're not going out and investing massive dollars to compete with television. Instead, when we were interested in college sports, we went to CBS, and together we went in and locked up rights. When we were interested in testing soccer in the US, I went to, at the time, David Nathanson and Fox Sports, and we did a deal to bring exclusive UEFA games to Facebook. Even me and you were talking for a while about figuring a partnership out to do that. So for us, it was all about, okay, what's the value proposition that's additive? And the story that we were able to uncover was if you, as a broadcaster, would retarget the fans who are consuming your sport, you could actually drive them to your owned and operated through a paywall, make money that way. You could sell merchandise, you could sell tickets for the leagues, and that really became the core of our business story in 2018 when we were in that business. 2020, we did not see it coming. It became a story about using Facebook for empty stadiums. With COVID and having no events on, we worked with our partners, both leagues and broadcasters, in order to figure out how you could continue to engage your fans, even in a world where there were no events. The NBA went big with classic games. I had to, for the second time in my life, watch Michael Jordan drop a double nickel on the New York Knicks. What Tim and NASCAR did with iRacing was remarkable, and having that live streamed. We came up with using groups as a form of a virtual tailgate, and branded content was the replacement for sponsorships in stadiums. You know, we had to get creative and figure out how Facebook's platforms could help provide the tools to continue to drive value to the industry during an obviously dark time. 2022 is the road to the metaverse. My job, my team's job, is to go to the industry and just explain the technology and where the business opportunities are. We're rolling out, a lot of our partners are investing in games. There's NFL Pro Era. The NFL has been very happy with their first 3 weeks having significant sales and driving real revenue. PGA or Golf Plus is a partnership with PGA of America, who apparently is just down the hall, and they've been very happy with the results, exposing to new audiences. Tim and I are working on some cool things around a new app that's going to be in sports called Stadium. That's going to really work to the business model that sports is familiar with. For example, having paywalls, being able to have sponsorship, and all those things. I mentioned Avatar Marketplace before. I don't know all the opportunities yet. The point is, we're taking our first steps as a company, and for me, I want to make sure that the industry is taking those first steps as well.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting evolution, because I think 5 years ago, property owners looked at the FANG companies and sort of just grouped them all together, Tim. There's whether they're potential rights licensing opportunities with them, Facebook and Apple and Amazon were all sort of grouped together, and Apple and Amazon are certainly pursuing live rights still, whereas Meta has evolved their strategy. Tim and I first met because Turner, my old shop, previously oversaw NASCAR's digital properties, and so Tim was the executive who came to NASCAR to oversee that transition of those assets back to NASCAR, and has done an absolutely amazing job. And Tim, I think one of the ways in which you've done so is that there was previously such a focus when Turner ran the digital assets on live, and you've really focused on, well, there's so many days where there isn't live racing, right? There's more days of non-live racing than there is live racing, and I think you've done a really good job of utilizing social platforms in those non-live windows. So can you speak to that strategy and some of the things that you've seen as you've rolled that out over the past 10 years?
Sure. What Matt isn't telling you is that we took the business back and during the course of 2012, relaunched in January of 2013, and we thought we were the smartest guys in the room and took a very different approach. And about 18 months later, we redesigned and relaunched again, and Matt and crew were like, that redesign looks just like the one that you took back from us 18 months ago. So sometimes learning the lessons of those that came before you is a pretty smart thing. So I think to the point of, probably the number one thing that would keep me up at night during the first years of operating this business was that we were not a highlight-driven sport. So it's not like an NBA game that may be a 30-point blowout that you're going to get a Steph Curry or LeBron James highlight. And that's going to drive that engagement specifically through social platforms. I think what we've learned to do is really embrace that as an opportunity from a storytelling perspective. So people care about athletes. People care about what they're doing in their off time when they're away from the field or away from the track. They care about the preparation. They care about their families. In our case, they care about pit crews and strategy with equipment. So I think the more that we leaned into telling those stories and not being selfish in terms of whether it be scale or how or when it happens, but being really intentional of allowing fans to consume that content on their terms and not ours. Because what's important to us, either from a growth of the sport or fan engagement or monetization, may sometimes be at odds with what is important to the fans. And I think what we learned over time was to really, almost optimize the content business that way, where if we believe that this is able to engage more deeply in an existing fan or engage a new fan and get them to pay attention to the sport, regardless of what that scale is, we feel good about that direction. So I think whether it's on our owned and operated platforms or certainly through social platforms, I think that's been a bit of a step change, and I think it's working. It's not, we're not. I don't think we nor any other sport is going to, win the battle of fan attention and engagement with big, uppercut home run swings. We're going to small ball it a little bit.
I've heard you speak in other forums that, just like we were talking about for live rights, not all social platforms are created equal, and not all of NASCAR's fans use various social platforms the same way. So are there instances in which you optimize certain content, whether it's for length or with music or all sorts of different ways for the various social platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok?
I think there is, and a lot of it is, I guess, based on the line. And what I mean by that is, I think in any forum, whether it be the broadcast or a social platform, you're making an assumption of where the line is of a fan's understanding of your sport. So you may advance that line forward and make the assumption that our fans engaging on Twitter may know more than the average fan. And so the way that we're able to communicate and publish and promote content on those platforms will be decidedly different than what we would do on a platform like TikTok. But Rob was talking about Meta and the engagement that we're working on. I think that's a really good example. I think if any of you, and hopefully some of you are going to go today, if you've never experienced a NASCAR race live, it is a very different, visceral experience. I would argue against any other sport. The experience of watching that on TV versus seeing it live, up close and personal, is a very different experience. It's hard to replicate that, and what I would argue is things like the Clash at the Coliseum and the Chicago Sports Race course. I think the virtual version of that is in Horizon Worlds and ultimately X Stadium. So if the next best thing is having someone put on an Oculus headset and experience that in mixed reality, I think that's a really good example of using those platforms and those audiences for very intentional use cases that may be very different than what you would do on an Instagram or Snapchat.
Rob, you referenced some of the early partnerships you've already done in the metaverse, and so can you speak to a couple of them that you're either most excited about, or you can speak from a forward-looking perspective at what type of either partnership or experience do you think most ideally utilizes aspects of the metaverse?
I don't think there's necessarily like one partner who's doing everything, because I think it's really hard to do that. You got to kind of place your bets. Obviously, it's any time you have new technology introduced, you want to lean in, learn, and be able to figure out where you could really take some of your swings. And so we've seen all over on the avatar front. I did a big partnership with the NFL last year around the Super Bowl. And it really was intended to just educate people that you could start to dress up your avatars. It's the scale on our platforms remains incredible. They're still growing, and we had I think it was 400 million plus people, and this is last year's stat, like 400 million people a month are playing around with avatars on Facebook and Instagram. So we wanted to educate that you could actually start to dress them up. So we did a deal
So this is me. I'm a Facebook user.
You're
I've got
a Facebook
an avatar.
user. Yep.
I put on.
There's a cartoon version of you, Matt.
Yeah, that's right. Packers gear, Super Bowl gear.
Yeah, you could have it. For us, it was 3 options. You could either wear a Bengals shirt, a St. Louis Rams shirt, or an NFL logo shirt, which we call the Rob Lowe option, because he wore a big NFL hat, if you remember. And so that was just a fun way of introducing the fact that you could start to customize your avatar. And that was the first step, and it's just tremendously successful in the U.S. So a lot of people having fun with it. Then when it comes to live events, we've had a partnership with the NBA, where we've had games shot in 180, so you're able to truly follow the action to all the way on the sides and turn your head. And that gave us the first taste of, what about having a live sports production in VR? The lesson that we learned that was interesting is we always thought that the best seat in the house would be the front row courtside seat. It turns out fans actually want to follow the action. So if the game's going to that side of the court, they sometimes want to be behind the basket. So we've already learned a great deal from there. Outside of those, a lot that's coming up is going to be our first taste into creating basically a custom sports experience called X Stadium. It's going to be an app. And by the way, we refer to apps as anything from the games that you're going to play to being able to click and watch. In this case, it's going to be customized to be programmed for the sports fan. And we're excited to have 3 races from NASCAR that are going to be in there. To Tim's point, our goal here is to be able to get people as close to the action as possible. Again, I'm sure some people will fear cannibalization. For us, we think that it's accessibility. There's millions of NASCAR fans who never have the ability to step foot in Daytona. So let's work together to figure how to get them as close as possible to that type of experience. Will it ever be the same? No. But it's probably better than anything you've had before. The last one I'll mention is Horizon Worlds is a big investment we've been making. The idea is to be able to, in essence, create like environments that people are able to come into that could be anything from a yoga-like experience on the utopian beaches, but for us with the NBA, we came up with something called NBA Lane, where fans were able to come in, they were able to take selfies next to the new trophies created by Tiffany's. They were able to do free throw contests, they were able to do slam dunk contests, they were able to look up on a Jumbotron and watch some of the highlights from the NBA playoff games, and then most importantly, you're able to socialize with fellow NBA fans. So in many ways, it's like going to a sports bar. And the NBA even had some fun experiences by bringing in some of their talent. Richard Jefferson and a few other stars came in and engaged with the fans as well. So, those are some of the first steps, but obviously a lot more coming. And the two I did not mention, by the way, are some of the games. So NFL Pro Era is a game where it starts with you coming out of the tunnel to an NFL stadium with fog around you as though you're the starting quarterback. You look up and look around and you have 80,000 plus people cheering. It's an incredible experience. And then you're able to actually play quarterback and have defensive linemen coming right at you, offensive linemen protecting you, and trying to throw the ball to open wide receivers. The big difference between like a Manning and previous technology to Quest is instead of pressing A to throw the ball, you literally have to do this. There's Golf Plus, which is an awesome game that allows you to have a full golf experience. Literally, when the ball lands on the green, which occasionally happens for me, there's a divot. You're able to look at the grass down low, and literally you see the blades of grass. When you look to the left, you see the 17th hole. So it's not like a golf simulator that you're accustomed to. This is truly an immersive experience as though you're there. You could go boxing against Creed and have fun and get a workout doing that. There's a lot more coming. We have basketball games coming out too. So extremely early days in this area, but the sports experiences are definitively coming.
So just in terms of a brand check, so Oculus is now branded Quest.
Yeah.
And then of the examples you gave, it sounds, if I'm guessing, the Super Bowl one and the NBA ability to take a picture don't involve hardware.
So the cool thing with the avatar is, and we're working as a priority to make everything interoperable, which means that you're able to wear that jersey in headset. So when you're actually talking to your friend or playing around a golf, you could have that shirt on, but also works on Instagram, also works on Facebook. So it's everywhere. It doesn't need to have a headset, but it could. And when it comes to Horizon Worlds at the moment, that is a VR experience. That said, we are working on the ability to also have it show up in 2D. This way, it's not going to be limited just to the 15 plus million or so who have the headset, but go well beyond that as well.
Back to Tim. So you spoke about connecting with your fans via social media with what I'd call shoulder programming. You also do this really well in a really ancient format called the docuseries. So just a very those actually still exist, and other leagues have done a good job as well. Whether it's the NFL with Hard Knocks, and everyone's heard of Drive to Survive with Formula One. You've done a couple over the course of the past 12 months, which have gotten a lot of buzz as well. One on Netflix and one on a combination of USA and Peacock. So could you speak to those for real quick?
Sure. Well, thank you for getting the Drive to Survive mention in. For those of you that know me, I have PTSD every time someone's like, "Have you guys ever thought of doing a Drive to Survive?" But yeah, we worked with Netflix and 300 Studios 2 years ago now to create a doc around Bubba and kind of what happened. Not only at Talladega Ford, but also kind of taking a look back at his journey and becoming the only African American competing in the Cup Series right now. And I think telling those stories and telling them through a lens that maybe not the way that we look at it strictly from a competition standpoint, I think that really resonated. And I think there's arguably one of the top two most recognizable Cup drivers right now is Bubba. So, I think the ability to tell those stories, back to what we talked about earlier, that are maybe, we call them NASCAR adjacent. So they may exist in this universe in which NASCAR also exists, but that doesn't need to be the main story. There's different characters to develop, and I think that leads into the one that we just wrapped up actually last night with the 10th episode of Race for the Championship, which was in partnership with NBC. And I think, look, to your point, Matt, this has been done, by several leagues, several properties. It's not a new initiative, but I would say it was maybe one of the most ambitious content projects that we've taken on for a lot of reasons, not the least of which was we had to turn episode 10 from Sunday in Martinsville. I mean, there were production staff that were on the ground in Martinsville for the crazy ending of that race, captured all that content post-race, drove back to Charlotte, started uploading, produced through the night and into the next day. We had our first meeting at 2 o'clock Monday afternoon with the NBC staff to show them initial cut of that episode. I mean, that is a huge lift, and I don't think the kind of below the line gang gets enough credit for projects like that. So I think we're extremely proud of it, but I think a lot of the conversation today, rightfully so, is around programming, and I think that is, the commonality from digital to social to linear to direct to consumer is programming, because I don't think in sports we have a lack of content or compelling content. I think we have a lack of shelf space to put that inventory in a place where the right audience is going to see it at the right time. And I think hopefully creating content like we did with Race to the Championship is kind of an indicator that we've got that content, and the way that it can be programmed and distributed is really critical to reaching the right audience.